Ready, Charlie?
I'm ready.
Alrighty, all right. Welcome back, everyone. Wake Up Boys podcast. Pleasure to have our first guest in here, Mr. Charlie, today.
Lieutenant
Colonel Bunn.
Colonel Bunn.
Very happy to have you here, Mr. Bunn. Would you please indulge us on kind of your background and where you got started and how you came to be where you are today?
Well, that can get to be a really long and involved story. But I'll basically start with the from joining the Army and moving forward. Went in the Army when I was 17 years old. Yes, my dad had to sign for me to go, and I went into was sworn in the old Sears building in Atlanta in 1970 and or 71, and I went to the Army's School for Wayward Boys at Fort Benning, and when I graduated from there, I went to flight school at Fort Rucker, and from flight school I went to Vietnam and was a medevac pilot in the 498th at Onlock. When finished up my first tour, I came back, was home for about a week, and I realized that I was so different than what my peers were, because that was right at the in my mind the worst part of the war protesters and all that stuff.
Charlie, were you ridiculed?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was bad, because when I got back, we were being permitted to grow our hair a little longer and restricted from wearing uniforms off the post and all that stuff, because people would attack us.
Even in Georgia?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You got attacked for serving your country. I just want to make sure I got that right.
Yes. And then so I went back. I went back to the same unit I had left and stayed for another year. The war was really winding down, and it was during the Vietnamization where we were training the Vietnamese to do the jobs that we were doing for our eventual departure. And then when I came back, I went to Fort Ord, which was a great place for us to go, because we were working at Yosemite, doing proving the concept that helicopters could be used for going and getting patients that were injured or ill in the backcountry or out on highways and that kind of stuff. We had sort of proved that the concept worked during the war. And
now, Charlie, the rescue operations in the backcountry, in the mountains, with helicopters, guys rappelling down, did y'all kind of invent that?
We perfected it.
Okay.
And lots of the aircraft had hoist, so we didn't necessarily have to rappel. There were guys that did, but that takes away some options for the operation of the aircraft if you've got a rope that's hanging down below you and you need to leave. So if it's a hoist, you can bring that cable back up and then go do what you need to do and come back.
And you're able to give medical attention as soon as you get them in the helicopter?
As soon as the medic gets on the ground. So we really did prove that concept during Vietnam and in Korea. Everybody that's seen MASH realizes that the Army was moving patients by helicopter even back in the 50s. but there wasn't much medical care in the aircraft when they were on the aircraft when they were being flown back, because it was generally a single pilot, and the patients were put on the skids out in the cold or in the heat, and
That'll wake them up.
Yeah, that'll wake them up, and.
Do they not get prop wash off the?
Yeah, they do, yeah. And so Fort Ord got over with, went to Hunter Army Airfield, was with the 1st Ranger Battalion. We were supporting them. I went to Ranger School while I was there because the Jimmy Carter's fiasco in the desert had occurred, where he tried to send all the branches of the service in to go get the Iranian prisoners, and they tried to get people to operate in a place that was dark and that nobody had actually operated together before, really. And so the Army couldn't talk to the Air Force couldn't talk to the Navy, we couldn't talk to the Marines. So they ended up with a collision of an aircraft on the ground and a big fireball, and which sort of destroyed the secrecy of the operation that was happening out there. And so we had to come back and rethink that. They decided that they needed to downsize some and I knew that was coming, so I found my way into the 145th Med Detachment up at Dobbins Air Force Base, and flew there for the next just over 10 years, I think. And I was flying at one of the local area hospitals, and their
emergency helicopter.
In their helicopters. And one of the guys that I worked with had been working up underneath his house with an old mushroomed out chisel. And if you have done that kind of stuff before, you keep the chisel ground down so that you don't have that mushroomed appearance of it, because you hit it wrong or with the wrong kind of hammer and it'll explode, and or shatter maybe is a better word. Ended up with a piece of metal in his eye, and ended his flying career just instantly. And I thought, that could be me. So I started going to college, and
while in the service.
No, I was out of the military as a reservist.
Okay.
But I used my VA money to go to college and then go to nursing school. And then thinking that I was just going to use that in my back pocket and keep it there for, and continue my flying career. And it didn't work out like that. I got there and I loved the science and I loved taking care of patients and all that stuff. So I went to work at Georgia Baptist and in the ER, and worked by.
Charlie, roughly what year would that have been?
It was 86. I was there from 86 to 89, and I worked in the ER and some in the surgical ICU, and then I was recruited by St. Vincent's Hospital in Billings, Montana, to come be their chief flight nurse. And so I went and did that. Got to Montana and hated it.
Too cold?
Oh yeah, southern guys are not meant to be walking around in 50 below weather.
Okay.
Southern guys like to go hunt Montana, Charlie, and come home.
That's right.
Yeah, we don't hunt it when it's negative 50.
Yeah. So, but I was able to get a lot of cool stuff done there. We did because one of the days I was standing out there on the helipad and realized just how cold it was, and thought, if we found ourselves forced down, I would die from the hypothermia. Mm-hmm. I just would. And had no idea of the the necessary skills. I could have figured it out, I think, but would I have been too cold by then to do what I needed to do? So it turned out, believe it or not, there was a detachment of reserve Rangers, or not Rangers, but Navy SEALs in Billings, Montana, of all places. And they came and did a winter survival course for us. It was great. And I learned a lot of cool stuff, like, if you're using a tree for cover, don't start your fire in there with you on the tree, because it'll melt the snow above you and the snow will fall down on you.
Put
So
your
build
fire out.
under
So
you.
build your fire out and away from the tree. So that was it really was a fun course. They did a really good job. Several of the guys were from North Carolina and Florida, and just like being in cold weather. I can't imagine.
How'd you deal with the frost with flying? The icing.
Well, you didn't fly into known icing conditions, because it gets heavy real quick, and you know how to land. So you don't fly into known icing conditions at all, period. But the frostbite, the freezing of your own tissue, that's sort of an up to you thing, with really good gloves and good nutrition, so that you're making sure that you've eaten, so that your body doesn't start to say, oh well, I've had enough of trying to keep you warm, I'm tired of this.
Is that just being out, or is that during flight?
No, it was just being out and stuff we did to stay ready for us to go. It was a fairly busy program.
And Charlie, was there like a calorie count that you tried to eat to go out in that cold?
No, but when you got done, and you woke up the next morning from what your shift was, you knew that you were hungry. And when you knew on the second plate of eggs and I introduced them to grits.
God bless you.
And grits, you know that your diet has really increased. So, and I had the additional problem of having to stay under 205 pounds. So I worked out pretty often and pretty hard.
So if you're on the helicopter and you're the head nurse, for all technical aspects, if you had to, you could fly the helicopter as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could treat them and fly it.
No.
If you needed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
If something happened.
I could. Well,
if your pilot died unexpectedly, I know it didn't happen back then. Like
if your pilot dies
today.
unexpectedly in that situation, you're probably going to die.
Okay.
I've heard helicopters referred to as holding on to them, keeping it from killing you the
Yeah.
whole time.
But like I said, it too cold, and this was before the Californians really started coming to Montana, and talk about needy. So they like people that are independent. They want you to be independent. They don't want to hold your hand every day.
Hell, I'm that way.
It's a very interesting place to be. I probably could have grown to love it there, but not with 50 below. No.
That's too cold.
So, because I don't care where you are in Georgia, the weather's not going to get severe enough that the weather will kill you unless you happen to be standing there where the tornado drives that 2x4 into your chest.
Correct.
And I'm fairly confident if I break down on a road in Georgia, anywhere in Georgia, I can walk to where I need to get to and be okay. So anyway, came back, pretty quickly got a job with a air ambulance company at Peachtree DeKalb that was a friend of mine was the medical director for, and I started doing that, and it wasn't a full-time gig really until about a year later, and I traveled all over the world, 136 countries on 6 continents,
Oh wow.
getting executives and students and folks that had gotten to a foreign country somewhere, gotten sick or gotten hurt, and needed to get back to the United States. So we would fly there, get them tuned up if they were in a hospital that we could do the tune-up in.
Charlie,
And then
kind of
we would-
explain how that would happen. How if I'm in a foreign land and I get sick, how do I get the military's assistance?
This wasn't military. This was a civilian company.
Okay.
Civilian company.
So this would be like the State Department would send y'all out to get them, wouldn't it?
It'd still be a civilian company, but yes.
But
State Department did a lot of work with us, but we had Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Lockheed Martin, all the major
I didn't
oil
realize
companies.
that was a business.
Oh yeah, big business. The Peace Corps, we went and got a poor kid. I mean, and for whatever reason, it just sticks in my mind that he had slipped in the mud where they were moving around with trucks, and had a truck back over his right leg, and it just degloved him. It just took the meat on his thigh and just peeled it back around his femur.
Yeah, I'll make sure y'all getting a visual, people.
And so when the civilians in this country he was in got down there and saw him, they irrigated it out, but not enough, and sewed him up.
Oh shit.
Oh.
Like sewed him completely up. So when we got him, his leg was his femur was his thigh was about twice the size of what it normally would be, and you could just tell by the odor.
Is that Cephas, Charlie? What is that? What kind of infection has he got going on?
Pseudomonas.
Okay.
And
Will that kill you?
yes, and so we flew him back, and he was doing well. They took him to the operating room and cleaned him up good, and I followed him along for about a month, and he was doing well, but I don't know what his eventual outcome was. We used to go get scuba divers in the around the Caribbean there, and bring them back to, like, Duke University's got a dive chamber there.
So how'd you fly them with the pressures?
The airplane we were operating could maintain sea level pressure
Okay.
as long as we didn't get above 10,000 feet.
Gotcha.
And
Who's paying for this, Charlie?
it was an assistance company, so it wasn't really insurance. So we avoided all the insurance company requirements and having the states have their nose poked into our business. It was an assistance company, and they're not. You don't have to go buy any of that.
Because I wouldn't think a kid in the Peace Corps could afford.
It's actually not all that bad if you go and look at the prices. They're reasonable for like a year-long subscription, or you can do it by the trip, or
It's kind of like an insurance plan.
it's like an insurance plan, but they call it an assistance plan.
Gotcha. And what would just kind of, I know the times have changed, but like 10,000, 25,000?
Like for a year would be $500 a month or $500 a year.
What if you did a one, like, I'm not a member and I'm messed up in the Caribbean, want y'all to come get me? Am I,
Oh, that changes things a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, you could get into the 25,000.
So what
Dollars
you're
easy.
saying is, if you're going to be taking a job or whatever, it's going to land you in a foreign place, you can sign up for this
Yes.
prior to ever going.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you travel a lot, even just here in the United States, I tell people that once you get out of Atlanta, it all changes. Yes, there's really good hospitals out there, but even though I completely understand that Atlanta is not the be all to end all on all things, but when it comes to medical care, it's just pretty damn good.
Would you say Atlanta's the southeastern headquarters for medical care?
No.
Did you lay that over to the Mayo Clinic down in Jacksonville, or?
Well, there's really good place. Duke University is outstanding. Emory's outstanding. Vanderbilt is outstanding.
Football team ain't worth a shit.
The University of Alabama UAB Medical Center is outstanding. So there are lots of really good places, but you need to get to a university-based medical center usually.
That's going to be your best care.
That's going to be your best care.
Now, is that just for a trauma situation, or is that pretty much all encompassing?
That's pretty much all around. And we'll get into this as we go, because well, anyway, I'll stop with that there. And then, as business does, they came along and the company got bought out. They wanted to renegotiate my salary down.
Of course they did.
And so my kids were little at the time, so I just said, well, I'll just see y'all later. I was working in an ER near our home, and I did some training things and that kind of stuff, and took care of patients in the ER. It was great fun. We had great docs there. The administration of the hospital was wonderful. And then 9/11 happened. And let me back up a little bit. I worked a shift as like an extra nurse at the VA, and ran into somebody that worked at an Army installation in Maryland, and he and I were talking, and he said, why are you here? I said, it's close to home. It's like 45 minutes away.
It's a job.
And he said, we could really use you where I work. And I said, well, let's make that happen, and we'll see how that works out. And I went up there and worked a couple of weekends, which was terrible because I had to leave on a Thursday afternoon, drive to Fort Detrick, Maryland.
From here? From Georgia?
From Georgia. And then drive back on Sunday afternoon.
You spent a lot of time.
That's
You got
a lot
to
of
know
driving.
yourself.
A lot of traveling.
You got to know yourself better, Charlie.
And I would sleep in the truck stop in Roanoke because I didn't want to stop in a fueling station for trucks. That's asking for trouble. So I did that for 6 or 8 months. I was about to tell them I'm going to have to go back to Georgia. I can't do this continued driving thing. And was talking to one of the guys. He said, well, let's set it up so you can teach. And we'll bring you up here, and you come 1 week a month.
That makes a little more sense than every weekend.
It started out as 1 week a month, and then it was 1 week every 3 months. So it worked out really good. I got all my time in. And,
what were you teaching, Charlie?
Chemical and biological warfare. and care of the patients and the battlefield aspects of that, and how things would be used. It was and some of the guys I was working with were the true fathers and uncles of chemical and biological warfare. They'd been dealing with it for 50 years. So it was a great place for me to learn and get the idea about how things worked and why you would want to use these things in these circumstances and all that. So, and then 9/11 happened, and then about a week after 9/11, the director of nurses at the hospital where I was working came up and slid her arm across my shoulder and said, "We want you to be our new emergency manager." And I said, "Well, now wait a minute. I'm not taking Cindy's job." And she said, "No, this is a job that is being created so that we can get used to dealing with emergencies at civilian hospitals. And there's a meeting in Atlanta that will take place. Go find out whatever kind of money everybody's making. Come back and we'll talk about it." And I did that, and we were just in the infancy of getting emergency management in the hospitals and really in the communities.
This would have been about what year, Charlie?
That was in 2001 into 2002.
And when you talk about getting prepared for emergencies,
it was an all-hazard aspect. So we dealt with everything from with truck fires under bridges on 285.
Yeah, we saw one of those.
To severe weather, to the drought that was around, the flu that was in 2009. Hospitals losing power, hospitals losing water. So it was truly an all-hazard approach to helping the hospitals get prepared so they could take care of patients with almost any eventuality.
So you took part in writing a lot of SOPs
Yes.
for
Yes.
the medical world that we now know as normal today.
Yes. Yes. So, and we all did it. It wasn't just it was all the hospitals in Atlanta, and at that point there were 46, I think. So, it was a loosely organized group, which was good, because people kind of came and went, which brought new ideas and other understandings and other things that we could do. And so it didn't last. And I stayed at the smaller hospital, and then I was recruited to one of a bigger hospital here in Atlanta that paid me much better, and had 2 hospitals initially, and then ended up being 3. And we got them going and did really good things there, because my boss essentially said to me, "This is your thing. You know how to handle it. I'm going to ask you questions if I need to, but I've got your back. Go forth and do." And he said, "The only thing I want to be able to hear out of you is if there's a problem, is we got that. We got it." And
he wanted solutions, not problems.
that's right. He wanted me to be able to go to a meeting with all the VPs and say, "We got this."
How much of your military training did you incorporate into?
Oh Lord, all of it.
Did being involved in Vietnam on a battlefield, did that kind of lead to the practices you put in place for all these hospitals?
Not directly, but having the confidence to let's do this and try it. If it doesn't work, we'll do something else. And the cooperation that you sought from other members of the team in the hospital. Neither my boss or I were interested in wanting any merit badges. Neither one of us were, one of these people that would have, want our chest all filled up with medals and all that kind of stuff. We wanted to make sure the hospital was going to be open and we could take care of patients no matter what.
Now, Charlie, did y'all plan for things like, say, a virus spread across the United States?
Yeah, we did that, and we thought we had that pretty well nailed down. And the flu came in and messed up some of our plans, but we were able to get through it because we all knew one another. If this hospital was running low on stuff, they could call the rest of us and say, I need help with this. Can you help me out? It's as if, like here, for example, if a tornado happened and the barn was destroyed where I kept horses that I now no longer have, I could call you and say, can I bring my horses over to your place till I find out what I'm doing?
Right.
And the interesting thing is that that relationship wouldn't exist without knowing him. And it wouldn't have existed if somebody hadn't totaled my car that I had intended to keep for years. So it's all, the whole thing about emergency management is who you know and knowing their capabilities and knowing what they're good at and the things they can and will help you with. So that's the way hospital emergency management was sort of built. And we rocked along and we had politically connected people that were able to go to Congress and say, we can do this. We can make our ability to take care of a lot of patients better, but we're going to need some help because it's going to require us to buy things that will eventually expire. We may not use them, but we also may not be able to get them if we don't have them.
So you're saying it was the better to need it and have it than need it and not have it.
That's correct. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking over here, not that I have any experience in this kind of stuff, but you talk about like a natural disaster. I went to Harvey, Hurricane Harvey. We went out to Texas. And one thing that really struck me, and it never even dawned on it, I mean, we're going out there, it's me and a couple buddies, and as we're going into like the first really flooded, stricken area, there's a sheriff walking down the road, stopping every truck coming in. And he gets to us, and I almost thought it was a trick question. He looked at the boat and he said, "Are y'all able to navigate currents?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "Okay." And he goes, "How many of you are armed?" And there was 4 of us. And I looked at him, and another guy in the truck looked at him and said, we're both armed. I thought he was about to say, "You're not allowed to take your guns in here." And he said, "All right, y'all are good to go." And I looked at him, I was like, "What was the armed question?" He goes, "If you're not armed, we're not letting you in." And that was kind of where I was going with my question is when y'all were doing all this management for disasters, there was literally like thieving and robbing people to a level that I've never seen before going on in there. Did that ever, as y'all were doing all these disaster plannings and emergency management, did that ever come up at the hospital, like people coming in and trying to rob it or take it over or any of that?
Well, that happened after Katrina. Interestingly, they could hear the perpetrators working their way up in the hospital building, stealing narcotics. And they just let them have them, and set it out there where they could get them and just go. Or they would say, we can't get this safe opened.
Right. If you let them have it, like I get that eliminates your threat, but then you don't have the medication for your patients. So
it's a
give or take.
two-edged sword, and
Yeah.
I guess it's a decision that each place is going to have to make, because you're not going to have, especially now, you're not going to have the law enforcement that can come protect your facility. You're not. You're going to have members of your own staff or a security staff that's trained up to the level of being able to protect your facility, and that's kind of one of those things because if their normal job is making sure the cars are parked like they're supposed to be and all that stuff, now they got to armor up and protect the facility. That may not be something they exactly planned on doing. When you may recall that when Desert Storm got started, they started calling up all the reserves and National Guard. Several people were saying, "Oh, now wait a minute! I did this so I could go to college. I didn't say nothing about going to a war."
That's part of it.
And you got on a uniform. Yeah.
That's kind of them paying for that college.
That's right. So, saddle up. Every incident that had happened at a hospital or involved a hospital, we were reading the reports, and that was great because it was a good nationwide effort to make sure that I think it was a tornado that was in Oklahoma City that blew the helicopter off the building. Just as a point of detail, the guy that was the pilot there, he had just about got it started to get it off the building, and the wind went over what he was able to do, and he just got out of the helicopter, and it was like 600 feet away from the building, where the tornado had picked it up and just spit it out into the ground.
That's nasty.
But that tornado was so strong it blew parts of the hospital off its foundation. But that was more stuff for us to learn. We learned that you should not put rocks on the roof of a building, because the winds will blow the rocks into your windows, and now you got glass.
And that was
inside the building.
Well, a lot of that
surprisingly
commercial
common thing.
roofing has rocks in it.
Yeah. So it was an interest, and then you see the things like the cameras in the buildings, and you talk about getting the patients to the interior of the building. Well, when it gets there, the wind goes through the doors or comes through the glass or whatever, and then the hallways of the hospital are littered with glass.
Mm-hmm.
When you've been in the hospital last time, but when you were there, did they ask you if you had shoes available, or to make sure you had shoes that you could put on?
I've been fortunate enough to never be in one without shoes.
Yeah. So it was one of those things that it was like an aha moment.
It's so
hey,
simple.
You think we should be wearing shoes in the hospital? Well, yeah.
That kind of would be a germ thing to me. There ain't no way I'm walking to a hospital barefoot anyways.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised if people let their kids sit on the floor of the hospital.
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, just something as simple as, hey, everybody always needs to have their shoes on.
So we discovered with the flu in 2007 that we were going to be short masks, we were going to be short ventilators, we were going to be short IV fluids, and cleaning supplies, because it happened to all of us. So we decided that the supply rooms, they had what's called par levels, and that was the average level that the hospital would need to operate for whatever period of time. And we decided that it would be a good idea to go 30% over your par level. You had it all the time. You put the new stuff on the back end, took it out from the front end, and that way it was a constantly rotating supply, and everything stayed new, and it wasn't being stored in some weird part of the building to expire.
Now, Charlie, when a vaccine or medication expires, y'all discard it?
No, not necessarily. There was a plan that was created. Let me be cautious here with what I say. They can extend the shelf life of certain medications, and they use those.
They're currently doing that, Charlie.
Yes, and that's a good thing, and I'm glad they're doing that. But with just this wintertime sick kid season, we're discovering that some of our really simple antibiotics are being made in China and made in India.
Yes, sir.
So we don't have those on hand here.
Because supply chain issues.
It's just supply chain issues. And
now, is that strictly, Charlie, in your opinion, because it's cheaper to make them in India and China instead of here?
Yeah.
Would you personally trust, and this is not a racist, ethical thing, would you trust medicines from China and India?
Yes. Well, while I was still a clinician, yes. As things have changed a little bit, I would trust the stuff's coming from India, but I would begin to cast doubt on things that were coming from China.
Is that because of the current state that we are with China and Russia and everything right now? I was just thinking that, because I was like, all right, if something was ready to pop off, I don't even want to talk about it because that's becoming realer by the second. If they really wanted to gut punch us off the rip, it wouldn't even be with a bullet. I mean, they could.
They don't have to. They're doing it right now.
Yeah, but
this is an armed invasion that we've got coming across the south border.
Yes.
And they are poisoning our youth by the thousands every day.
Okay.
Now, when you say poison, we're talking about fentanyl and things of that nature.
Yes.
Just drugs in general coming across that border.
Yes. And we can stop it. We did stop it. It was stopped.
It was stopped. Yes, it was.
And
now, Charlie, it's my understanding may be wrong, but in each state that has a border to another country, the governor has every bit of ability to declare just what you said, an invasion. I think a lot of what we've seen in the last couple of years is theater. You know, put them on a bus and send them here, send them there. Could Greg Abbott not shut that border down if he wanted to?
Yeah, he could. There's a provision in the Constitution, and I'd have to look back to see.
But he essentially can defend it.
Where the governor can defend the border if the United States fails to do that.
Well, isn't that kind of where it comes in? The governor's responsible for that state if the president
He's
fails
essentially
to
the
be.
president of that state.
Right. Would it do any good to shut the Texas border down, because you got California right next to it, and they're never going to shut it down? That's their motto: is come on in.
Well, we can.
Well, they would be much more welcomed in California than they are in Texas, I personally think. And Billy, I don't have my glasses on and I can't reach for them.
Yeah.
Just read off Mr. Charlie's credentials there.
Okay, you're asking me to read. I'm the math one. Certified Hospital Engineer Coordinator 3, Registered Nurse, Emergency Medical Technician, Critical Care Registered Nurse, Certified Emergency Nurse, Certified Flight Registered Nurse, Peace Officer Standard and Training Certificate Instructor in Chemical Hazards, Biological Hazards, and Emergency Medical, POST SWAT Certified, Advanced Cardiac Life Support, Basic Cardiac Life Support, and Pediatric Advanced Life Support.
It's up. What that tells me, Billy, is you can deal with Charlie one or two ways. He can either help you or kill you. It's up to you, whichever you want him to do. So,
Mr. Charlie, if I ever find a shirt that says that, I can either help you or kill you, I'm going to order you one and send it to you.
Okay.
Charlie, we won't spend all afternoon on it, but let's kind of get up to current. And you've got the credentials. You've been around this shit for 50 years, basically.
Right.
What are your what's the word I'm looking for here, Charlie? What are your thoughts? What are your opinions on where we're at with our current? We'll call it a national disaster. In a lot of ways, it is.
When I went to EMT school, one of the things that fascinated me, because we worked with a cardiologist that was a really good clinical guy. He would set the lab work off to the side, and he'd look at and talk to the patient. And when he had students with him, he would put a pillowcase over the monitor that was in the ICU so that you couldn't see it. And his instruction to us was to be able to decide whether or not the patient was sick, or if they would, if they needed to be transported, if they could go with a family member. And I learned so much from that guy, and then later to discover that the Russians really do a lot of that kind of clinical medicine too, and I loved it. I really like the keep it simple, stupid kind of philosophy. But he could hear stuff with his stethoscope that I had really never even given any consideration to.
I was going to ask, is that like taking away one of your tools just to help you be able to just see it without having to look at everything?
Without looking at a bunch of stuff that might be wrong. So I caught this was my first encounter with the CDC. Somebody said
This would have been when?
1974.
Oh, they were just getting the Tuskegee experiment wrapped up. Okay, go ahead.
And so I called them and told them that I wanted whatever they had for instruction on hearing heart sounds and what those meant. And the lady said, "Oh, we got a whole series of tapes on those." And I said, "Well, how would I get those?" She said, "Well, come on in. I'll have the form here. You just fill it out. We'll make them for you right then, and you can have them." And I said, "How much?" She said, "They're free."
Okay.
Oh, well, hell yes.
I'm on the way.
Yeah, so I went over to the campus. The campus was open at that point in time. You could just drive up to the library that was there, and you parked across the street. Went in, and she was right. She said, "You're the guy who wants the heart sounds, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." And uh, she said, "Well, here's the form you filled out." She said, "I've already started running them off for you," and I got a thing, a little box of cassette tapes. There was 10 of them, and she said, "There you go.
Now, Charlie, I'm
Start with number
assuming
one, work your way up."
like one sound would be a healthy heart, and then the other
And you compare
sounds
it to a dark,
might have a
normal.
heart murmur or
Exactly.
something.
Yes, yes, they were a great teaching tool, and and now all that's, you can find it on a YouTube video or
Right.
something like that. But that was my first encounter with them, and I figured out how much information they had over there, and it was like going to a medical school library, but without the crap you have to go through
Right.
to get into the medical school library that's in a university. So I was over there a lot. I drove from Covington Highway and 285 to CDC, and they were the be all to end all for a lot of us.
You trusted them, didn't you, Charlie?
Trusted them.
Yeah.
Trusted them. They were
Simple yes or no question. You trust them today, Charlie?
no.
Okay.
No, they're at the place where if we walked outside and they told me the sky was blue, I'd say, "Oh no."
Yeah, I think that's the case in the medical community, period, these days, Charlie.
You said something that was kind of interesting to me there, and it was kind of how you reacted to the CDC and being able to go get that. You're in the medical field, and is that hard for you to further educate yourself as far as like getting into those libraries, or was it just that
It was then. It's there's so much information on the net these days. It's so easy to find. If you know what to look for, and the better than that, the places to stay away from.
right?
I had mentioned earlier that if you're looking for medical advice, stay away from blogs. There are plenty of articles out there that are written by university-based professors or students or something like that, so you can get your information from a reliable source.
Well, and I've seen, recently in the last few days where doctors that are alumni from, say, Yale, they're coming out in disagreement with Yale's current vaccination policies, and they're educated there. Charlie, what occurred to go from, hey, this is a great place with a wealth of knowledge, I trust them, to I don't trust them?
Well,
And did you have any kind of interactions, Charlie, with FDA and any of their goings on?
no,
Okay.
but as the COVID thing spun up, I had just retired from the VA, and I looked
Were you gone from from the VA when COVID
yes,
hit?
Yes. So I looked at my wife and said, "There's something wrong here. There's something not right here." And she'll tell you, within a day or so, my phone started ringing. And it was
From
other people that had worked up at Fort Detrick or
now, is this within a day or two of it being announced? Hey, it's taken over. It's here.
There's something. There's a disease that's spreading rapidly, and we're going to call it COVID. And when they started talking about the things that it would do and the problems that people were having and all that stuff, it was so much of it that didn't sound right. So I we started talking amongst ourselves, and they decided that you started hearing these people on the that were publicly saying, no, this is not. There's something wrong here. There's something that's not right about this, well, this drug will help it, or that drug will help it. It doesn't need to be. We don't need to do something else. And it was fascinating to me that the media was running to the fire that these physicians and frontline caregivers were providing, and squirting them with fire, and ruining their careers in some cases. People that were relieved from their faculty positions at the hospitals where they worked,
this is
Why
early.
Why were they relieved, Charlie?
Right.
they were trying to say they were lying about this new disease, that there wasn't a lot of stuff known about. And there was this one black female physician who was stunningly aggressive about what she knew and the numbers of patients that she had and the documentation that she had to back her up on what she had been able to do with
Do you recall her name?
I don't, but I'll look it up and
Do you, if I said it, would you know it? It wasn't. Was it Dr. Christina Parks?
I don't know, but I'd have to look her up to see.
She's qualified to make you a vaccine.
Yeah.
And she was one of the first. I thought I was going to get to see an angry black woman chewing out a school board.
Mm-hmm.
And it was right the opposite. It was a very educated woman that never raised her voice and just took them to school.
What's that name on?
Dr. Christina Parks. And I'm sure, Charlie, that these folks that you're in conversation with, y'all probably were not in 100% agreement with each other,
No, we
were you?
weren't. No.
And at that point in time, okay, you say something's not right here. Is that just simply the way the virus got here? I mean, I have no medical experience, but I was pretty certain that it didn't come from some bad in a wet market.
Is this her?
Yeah, that's who I was.
Yes.
Yeah, that's her.
Yes.
So that would be Dr. Christina Parks.
You know, early on, thank God, I saw her. And I saw some other people early on. And, you know, I guess the biggest thing that still blows my mind, and it varies by age, but all three of us, which are all in different generations, we all still have a 99% chance of surviving COVID. Billy's is better. I'm a little better. Charlie, I'm sorry, you're the old guy. but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's this thing is not a killer. It's really not.
Well, first off, I'm going to stop us right here just real quick. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. Go find it on Rumble to see the rest.
There you go.
We'll put the link in the description because I'm tired of biting my tongue.